Good evening. My name is Annie Stevens. I'm the Vice Provost for Student Affairs at the University of Vermont. And here we are again, doing another UVM Strong live session backed by popular demand. This night's session is going to be more about planning for departure to leave campus. What does that look like? Break, both Thanksgiving and winter break. And then looking ahead to spring and all the things that students and their families need to know in order to plan ahead and think about making decisions and what that means. So I want to welcome you again tonight. For those of you who might be new to joining us, it's great to have you with us. And those of you who are returning, always good to have you again with us as we go through what has been an incredibly, for us, successful semester. And we hope that it has felt that way for you. And we want to keep it that way. We only have 2 more weeks here. So we want to do this strong and come on the other side with everyone being healthy and safe. So with all of that, I have many of our regular great guests with us this evening who will cover certain topics. And you can see right now on the slide that we will do a few things tonight. We'll go through and just give you, if you're interested, I hope you're interested in knowing kind of where is Vermont right now in the context of COVID-19, how's UVM doing, what does this mean in the context of planning for all of you. And then of course there's decisions that many of you, all of you have to make in terms of deciding about when to go home or when to leave campus, also deciding about when to come back or staying at home for the spring. So lots of decisions to be made. Always having a plan. We want to make sure we can walk through each scenario of planning with you. And then, as I said, looking ahead to dates and times and logistics for the spring. And of course, we'll try to leave some time for questions and answers and get to as many as we can. So with all of that, I am going to hand it over to our great and one of my wonderful colleagues of many, Vice President for Public Safety and Operations, Gary Durr.
Thank you very much, Annie. It's great to be back together with you all. And as Annie said, it has been a really wonderful semester, and I am just so proud of what everybody has done this semester. I want to give you a little bit of update on where Vermont is at right now. And I know everybody's probably been following the news in their own home states and their own counties and towns. And some of you may have had time to check in on what's going on in Vermont. But Vermont over the last several days has seen a rather significant increase in the number of reported cases. We're still doing remarkably well compared to other states and other counties, but we have seen an increase in the last few days. Today, Vermont reported its largest number, 109 new cases. It was the single largest day in the COVID pandemic for the state of Vermont. And I would want to point out that it's not just in and around UVM. It is unfortunately all across the state where we are seeing increases. Chittenden County, where University of Vermont is located, reported 16 new cases today. And over the last 14 days, we've had 148 new cases in the county, excuse me. As a result of the increase, the governor has implemented several changes, some of which we'll talk in detail tonight, others of which have been covered in communications we've sent out. One of the changes is that they have advised that gatherings not exceed 10 people indoors and social distancing outside of 25 outdoors. That's because what they have seen is that the social gatherings that are at those sizes really lead to an increased spread of COVID-19. Second thing, and we sent out information today on it, is they made significant changes to travelers entering from Vermont for non-essential travel. And basically it affirmed that they removed their, some of you have been following this before, the safe counties or the green counties, and basically said anyone traveling to Vermont needs to quarantine for 14 days or 7 days plus getting a negative COVID-19 case. So in the summer, when some of you were planning trips to campus, we were telling you to check that map, and see where it's at now. Now what the state has decided is anybody traveling from outside of the state of Vermont must quarantine for 14 days or 7 days plus that negative test. I want to kick it over to Dr. Michelle Pavola to give you a UVM context.
Good evening. Welcome back. So UVM's been doing great. So over 100,000 UVM students, staff, and faculty have been tested so far this semester. And just this last week, over 14,000 people were tested. And so for this week, almost 7,000 people have been tested. And even with so many tests being done, our positivity rate is outstanding at just 0.03%. But as Gary just said, the COVID picture in the US and Vermont is changing and not for the better. So we need to stay ahead of this virus and take the steps necessary to try to prevent cases from spreading. Some of these steps are not allowing guests in halls and rooms, asking people to limit even small gatherings, and emphasizing how important it is to follow the travel guidelines that Gary just mentioned and we'll talk about again. So it's back to you, Gary.
Thank you very much. I want to talk a little bit about some of the current COVID-19 guidance, specifically as it relates to travel coming up on the Thanksgiving and end of the semester. Students, we're really going to encourage you, and there's going to be a notice going out tomorrow, that before you leave to go home, and even though you've been following your every 7-day test, we want to encourage you to get an additional test 48 hours before you travel and wait to get those negative results. We want to make that available for you. So if you test next Monday, but you're not leaving campus until next Saturday, think about going in and getting tested on Thursday. You'll get your results on Friday night. And then if you're negative, you can go home. If you're positive, somebody from the Center for Health and Wellbeing will contact you about options. But we know you're going home to see family, friends, brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents, and other people that might have health risks, that we want to make sure that you're not spreading COVID-19 unknowingly to people that you care and know and love. Families, if you're coming to Vermont to pick up your students, you have two options. First is to follow the state of Vermont's travel and quarantine guidance and quarantine for 14 days or 7, followed by a negative test, and then come to campus. Or you can do that in the state, but you really, at this point, have to do the 7 days, particularly if you're picking up somebody later next week. The state has indicated that when you come to pick up people, that we're treating these as quarantine conditions. You can travel by personal vehicle to and from Vermont. You cannot enter any of the UVM facilities, and you can pick up your student and load in at the curbside only. We want you to wear a mask anytime you are outside of your vehicle. We want you to stay 6 feet away from people you don't leave. And if for some reason you need to come and stay overnight, you can stay in a lodging property on campus, but while you're there, you must quarantine at that property. And that means not going out and taking advantage of the services that are in the hotel or anything. You need to be present, stay in there and treat it as quarantine. And then the next day, come and pick up your student from campus. Now back to you, Dr. Michelle Pavola.
Thank you. I get to talk about something positive. What works? So our exceptionally low positivity rate is a testament to the success of UVM's COVID response plan and how well the students have followed the guidelines laid out in the Green and Gold Promise. The important parts of our COVID response are contact tracing and our isolation and quarantine process. Through our contact tracing process, Student Health Services has successfully contained 34 cases so far, with no secondary spread after students have been placed in isolation or quarantine. Students who have tested positive and entered isolation have not transmitted the virus to anyone else. No one in quarantine has transmitted the virus to another person. You may have heard about the group of 30 on campus students who were exposed to a student who tested positive. Well, all the students who quarantine on campus due to this exposure have now tested negative. It's working. We know the more quickly we can get a person who has tested positive into isolation, the better. Once we learn of a positive COVID test, within 12 hours and often much more quickly, Student Health Services has informed that person and told them to isolate. In some places outside Vermont, people who test positive are not informed for several days and can be spreading the virus during that time. We also immediately elicit lists of close contacts from people who test positive and get all the possibly exposed people into quarantine. Quarantine is crucial. It keeps people separate from others during the incubation period of the virus. This helps prevent the spread of COVID before a person knows they're sick or if they have the virus and don't have symptoms. Being in quarantine for up to 8 or 9 days is not easy, but a few hundred students have been successful at completing this. Limiting gatherings is also important. Now more than ever, it's critical that we don't let our guards down. COVID fatigue is real, but we must stay vigilant, especially in small gatherings where people know one another. Maintaining physical distance and wearing face coverings at gatherings with anyone outside your household can slow the spread of the virus. So even if you know everyone at a gathering, mask up and keep distance. Well, let's hear from Annie again.
Thank you so much, Gary and Michelle. And now we're going to move into that next portion of the presentation about the decisions, the many decisions you have to make, and primarily around academics. And for that, we're going to have Jay Dickinson, our Vice Provost for Academic Success, and then around housing, our Executive Director for Residential Life, Rafael Rodriguez, will talk to us about the decisions around housing, about break housing, and then about, as I said, spring planning. So, Jay, I think you are up next.
Thank you, Annie. So as many of you know, tomorrow is the deadline for electing the at-home learning option. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to be an at-home learner. First of all, you will be able, as an at-home learner, to enroll in fully online classes, remote classes, and special sections of mixed courses that are designated for at-home students. You will not be participating in COVID-19 testing because our expectation is that you will never come to campus during the spring semester. You will reside in an off-campus location, and which set of guidelines applies to you depends a little bit on where you are in your UVM education. So first year sophomores or any other students who haven't completed their 4-semester on-campus residency requirement, if you elect the at-home option, you have to live at your officially listed permanent residence. So you need to be at home essentially with your family. Undergraduate students who've met their on-campus housing requirement, graduate students and certificate and non-degree students may reside locally off campus. You will be required to recommit to the Green and Gold Promise. So what does this actually mean for you? First of all, we want to make it clear that you will still be able to access remote services, tutoring, writing support, digital library services, and in some cases being able to have library materials sent to you, and reference librarian support are available. Your advisor is available to meet with you remotely. You will not, however, have access to our physical campus for any reason. So if you need to work on campus, if you have research on campus, if you intend to have meetings on campus or need to do specific visits, for example, to see an advisor or supervisor, you may not elect the at-home option. This applies to all students at every level who are interested in the at-home learning option. In addition, graduate students who have an assistantship will need to provide documentation from their supervisor that all activities for their assistantship will be accomplished remotely, and after that, your request for an at-home status can be approved. I do want to note that unlike in the summer at the beginning of the fall at-home option opening up, we are not able to offer a free summer course for the spring 2021 at-home option. Now, we have received a number of questions from students who are concerned that they won't know if they want to be at home until after they complete their registration process. We strongly advise you, if you are still trying to decide between at home or on campus options, that you go ahead and choose at home. It will be significantly easier for you to request a reversal of at home than to be able to get a late at home extension of the deadline. So please, if you are really up in the air and not sure, we do recommend that you go ahead and you fill out the at home option form and turn that in by tomorrow evening at 11:59 p.m. So now I'm going to turn it over to Annie, who's going to talk a little bit about what life on campus is going to be like in the spring.
Thanks so much, Jay. So let's talk about that just for a second. For those of you who are already on campus this fall, I think life will actually be fairly similar. You are all going to be asked, whether you're at home or in person, you're going to all be asked to recommit to the Green and Gold Promise. We will send that out probably mid to late December, so you have a chance to fill that out prior to your arrival back on campus or to starting classes February 1. Study spaces will be available, but they are limited. You know, some of these spaces are reserved for classrooms or reserved for programs or not open at all. So just know that we will try to do our best with study space, but it will be limited. I think the toughest thing about coming in the spring, of course, will be winter. It's going to be colder. We will have tents available outside for outdoor interaction that will be heated, have Wi-Fi, but it's still going to be really different than probably what this fall has felt like if you have been on campus. There's going to be limited social spaces. We are trying to do some creative things like fire pits that are already out on campus in front of the Davis Center. We're hoping to set up an ice rink, but hopefully the winter is in one way going to be cold enough for the ice rink and yet warm enough for all of us to be outside more. And I talked about some of the tents that we'll have available. Access to campus resources will be pretty much the same. I mean, virtual will pretty much rule the day in terms of clubs and organizations or meetings, classrooms, many of them. But of course, we will have those in-person activities as well. We'll have recreation, certainly. We're going to try to make sure our athletic teams have some games if all goes well. And we'll see some winter sports, hopefully. Of course, that'll have to be virtual because we can't be in person to watch them, but hopefully it'll be something that we can all rally around. Dining again will be grab and go with limited in-person seating. And of course, the guest policy in the residence halls will all be dependent upon where we are with our own risk levels and number of cases on campus when we get to that point. So while we are hoping for the best, we always plan for the best. Know that it's going to be a little bit more challenging probably than it even has been this fall, given the winter months and just trying to make sure that everybody is safe. So we wanted to give you a picture of the campus so that you can make the best decision possible around whether you want to be at home or in person. I hope some of this helps. And I'll turn it over now to our executive director, Rafael Rodriguez, so he can walk you through some of the decisions about housing. Raf, you're up.
Thanks, Annie. Good evening, everyone. Great to be with you here again, and great to be with these amazing colleagues to walk you through and help you understand some of what's happening on campus and some of the important decisions you have to make in the coming weeks and the coming days for some of them, right? So this will be one of the many times you'll see me. I'll do my best to try to make housing processes and decisions as clear as possible so that you know what your options are. We're going to begin with what are the decisions that you need to be thinking about at the moment. Most of these, or some of these, may not apply to you, but broadly, let's just begin by discussing extended stay for housing. That's one of the first decision points we need to, you will have the opportunity to consider, and we're offering two options at the moment. The first extended housing option or opportunity is for anyone who is interested in staying towards the end or through the end of the semester. That is from November 25th through December 12th. At the moment, any current student living in the halls can request this. The form is open. It does close on November 16th in 3 days. The other housing option is winter break emergency housing, and that is for anyone who would like to request to stay on campus between December 12th through the beginning of the semester. A couple of things to know about emergency winter break housing. It is only for students who are currently in the halls and returning next semester. It also is only for students who are either housing insecure or international students who are unable to travel home. This we expect to be a much smaller group, and anyone who is requesting winter break emergency housing should probably expect and can become comfortable with the likely scenario that we will be consolidating folks into one single hall. That is really for the ability to us to provide you better service, to provide a more safe experience on campus versus having you sort of be in spaces that are really empty with except for your presence. And it allows us to just, again, deliver better service. There is a cost to winter break emergency housing. There is none if you decide to stay to the end of the semester. If you're staying for winter break emergency housing, the cost is $1,000, and that will cover both your housing and a certain amount of meals. All that information, of course, can be found on our website too. We can go on to the next slide. Something for folks to know and consider. Part of staying on campus, and Gary has done a good job of, and Michelle, talking about what has worked, what has kept us safe, what has kept UVM with, again, 0.03% positivity rate. Those are some great statistics. It definitely outpaces what we see around the country, but that is a result of some intentional work and, of course, compliance on your end. And to that end, we also expect students who are staying for both extended stay through the end of the semester and also during winter emergency break housing to continue to comply with the following. We ask folks to continue to participate in their 7-day tests. We're going to ask students to continue to uphold the green and gold policy, the green and gold promise, as well as any Res Life COVID-19 policies. We're going to ask students not travel outside the state of Vermont and to refrain from congregating with anyone who has either traveled outside of the state of Vermont without quarantining, or anyone who's coming into the state of Vermont without having quarantined. So those are some good understanding of what we are going to do to make sure that we continue to keep folks safe during that time. A couple of other things to consider, decision points that might apply to you, is any student who's currently on campus but chooses to commute locally for the spring semester. Now, when we say commute locally, we're talking about students who are able to live with parents or guardians in a commutable distance, which we define as a 30-minute drive or 30-mile, whichever suits the situation. So again, 30 minutes to 30 miles is what our parameters are. If you're able to live with a parent or guardian, you are absolutely able to submit a notarized commuter request form. You can do so through January, up until January 31st with no financial penalty. So that's important to know. I will highlight that we are talking about commuting as an option. That is completely different than what we have talked about as a learner, as an at-home learner, right? This student is simply someone who lives locally under the parameters we talked about, 30 minutes or 30 miles, but will still and can still take classes in person. So those are two very different things. That deadline, again, for commuters is January 31st with no financial penalty. A couple of things, and this is maybe the easiest decision. We've been hearing a lot from folks who are currently at home and want to come back to campus. And this is great because you've made a decision, and that's excellent, and there's nothing else for you to do. So folks have been asking, well, do I have to submit another form? No, the reality is we're going to default to assuming you'll be back on campus unless you fill out another at-home form, which is due again tomorrow. So if that makes sense, if you're returning to campus, but we're not here this semester, there's nothing else you need to do. Simply just wait to get your room assignment, which will go out again on January 7th. A couple of things to know. We've talked about this quite a bit last time we all connected and met. We will be prioritizing placing students as best as we can into their preference learning community. We already have your housing and meal contract on file. We know which learning community that was. That is what we'll focus on. Again, because our spaces are currently filled, we will not be doing a roommate preferencing process. The reality is we do not have enough fully emptied rooms in order to accommodate any kind of successful number of students requesting to room with someone. So that's not going to be a possibility since most of our spaces are at least fully full and or half filled. We will prioritize getting you into your same learning community. Another good thing to note is if you have our student who was at home this semester and is coming back to campus, orientation will have elements and components that will include and support you in your transition back to UVM or your transition back to in-person at UVM. And I'm going to hand it off to Jay, I believe.
Thank you, Raf. So I'm just going to run down some of the key dates and deadlines that are upcoming in this semester. So Also, please note that some people have asked us, well, if I know I want to be an in-person learner, I want to be on campus, what do I need to do? You don't need to do anything. That's the default. So we are going to assume that you're going to be in person unless you fill out that at-home election form, and then we will know that you are choosing to be an at-home learner. So if you were at home in the fall, you still need to submit a new at-home election form for the spring. As you know, some people are coming back to campus, and if you do want to stay at home, we want to make sure that we have that information. So we've already passed November 7th. That's when the final schedule of courses was posted, and we expect very minor but typical changes to that. There might be some changes in room location. There might be a couple of new courses added or an instructor change, but we're trying to keep those changes to an absolute minimum at this point. As I said before, tomorrow is the deadline for the at-home request form, and it must be submitted by the end of the day at 11:59 p.m. You have to submit the at-home form in order to gain access to spring course sections that are only available to at-home students. So that's why we're requesting that you submit it prior to the registration process beginning. On Monday, November 16th, course registration begins. And also on that day, you need to submit your extended stay form if you wish to stay in on-campus housing through the end of the semester. And then moving on to next year, January 31st is the final deadline for a commuter request form if you would like to avoid financial penalties. So if you decide, if you're a Vermonter and you decide that you would like to become a student who's living at home and commuting to campus, the deadline for that is January 31st. So now I'm going to hand it back to Annie.
Great. Thanks so much, Jay. And I want to also kind of bring us into this next section of planning. So Gary's going to come back and talk to us about, before you leave, what are all the things you need to do to stay safe, and kind of go through that again, because we want people to go back, leave campus if you're here now on campus or in town. We want to make sure you're traveling safely. And I'll come back and then do a little bit of a summary about planning ahead, and then Raf and Gail will join us in terms of specific planning. So I'm going to turn it to Gary next. Thanks.
So thank you, Annie. As I mentioned earlier, we really want to make leaving campus as safe as possible for you, your family, and friends that you're going to be visiting. As I mentioned earlier, you've all been doing a fantastic job of testing on an every 7-day basis, but we want you to make sure that 48 hours before you leave, you take an additional test so that you can get those results. Make sure you plan it in so you wait to get those results, so that you will know that when you leave campus to drive home to family, that you're not bringing COVID-19. We would encourage you in that interim time to really limit your activity, to kind of voluntarily quarantine for that period of time so that you don't risk additional exposure. But we really hope that you'll take advantage of that. I want to let you know too, is if, as has been the case all year, is if test results come back positive, somebody from the Center of Health and Wellbeing will contact you about those options and talk specifically about options that are available for you over Thanksgiving break. We've extended the testing center hours on the weekend before Thanksgiving. We'll be open both Saturday and Sunday, November 21st and 22nd, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you are leaving early and you're going to miss a future testing, make sure that you submit a testing exemption form if you are leaving early, so we do not track you for non-compliance of testing. And we're going to be putting out FAQs with regards to testing in December and January in the coming days. The testing will be available on campus both in December and in January. The December hours are posted on the website already, and we'll be posting January hours shortly. But if you're in the area, and even though you're not required of testing, I really want to encourage students to take advantage of our on-campus testing so that you know that you are safe and healthy even when we're not in session. I'll turn it back to Annie.
Great, thanks so much. So let's do a quick overview right now and just pause. I know there's a lot of information coming at you, but we just want to make sure you have this, and you can always refer back to it, right? So just know that that's also a possibility. So this next section, all about planning, is by living situation. So we're going to go through, if you're an off-campus student right now, living off campus, but you're going to leave the local area, what do you need to do? If you're off campus, but you're staying, what are the resources around Burlington during this pandemic that might be helpful to you, both on campus and off campus resources? And then Raph will come back. That would be Gail, who will be talking about off-campus resources. And then Raph will come back and he'll be talking about, so your on-campus decisions, right? It's going to be either plan A, which is you're on campus and you're going to be leaving, but you'll be returning in the spring, and you know that for sure. Or you're on campus and leaving, but you're not going to return in the spring. So what does that mean? And these are the kind of decisions about, if anything we have learned so far, you need to be flexible, right? So if you think you're maybe even hint that either you're not going to return in the spring, or what if the pandemic gets worse and we need to be remote a little longer, you're going to want to bring all of your belongings back home with you, or wherever you're going for that long extended break period. So think long and hard about those decisions about what belongings that you will need over that long break. And make those good decisions. And then we'll also talk about the on-campus staying after Thanksgiving. So I'm going to hand it off to our Director of Student Off-Campus and Student Experience and Relationships, and Gail Champnoy. She'll walk through off-campus student experience, both leaving the local area and staying in the local area. Gail, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Annie, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you this evening. And I want to say too that off campus, our mayor, our city councilors, our community members have been just have so much gratitude for all the good work that the students have done to keep everyone healthy and safe. So I truly, truly thank you for that. I want to just stress again about if you are planning to leave, to make sure you get that pre-departure test, wait for a negative result. And if you have a positive result, we'll take good care of you with our Center for Health and Wellbeing. And then if your friends or family members are going to be visiting you before you leave, make sure that they follow all of the instructions around traveling. And for apartment preparation, we weren't really sure how many of our off-campus students were going to stay in the area for Thanksgiving recess or for winter break. And so we did a survey and we had 1,200 responses to that. And of that, we found out that 562 students are not leaving the state during Thanksgiving recess. So we do have a good number of students that are going to be here. And the good news is that 83% of them knew that if they needed to quarantine. So again, positive results about our students being very knowledgeable about quarantining. And then we asked if students were planning on living in their rental after Thanksgiving recess and before the spring semester begins. And 776 students said yes. So we are going to have quite a critical mass here. And what's important about that, if you are leaving the state, it's going to get cold. So things to make sure that you do is don't turn your thermostat totally off. You don't want any burst pipes. And also Burlington has a winter parking ban. So you want to make sure that your cars are not on the street because you will get towed and get ticketed for that. You want to make sure all your windows and doors are locked. And you also want to make sure that you communicate well with your roommates. Now, some of you may be coming and going, and you really have to pay attention if you're coming and going in and out of the state. Have you gotten together to talk to your roommates about a plan? And that's a question that we did ask of students. And 47% of our students said, yes, we did make a plan with our roommates. So that means quite a few haven't yet sat down and done that. So it's really critical that you do. Make sure you all have a good understanding that you're all on the same page with what you're going to do about traveling. We also are really concerned that some of our students might have some needs because some of them have lost jobs, some of them had paid internships that they lost. And so we took a look at paying for rent, paying for food, and paying for utilities. So we did find that we had 27% of our students struggling with rent, 30% with food, and 23% with utilities. So we have a lot of resources that are available to students, and they're both local, state, and UVM. And I'll go into those in a little more detail, but just wanted you to know that we're paying attention to that and we're finding ways to address it. I found out when we asked the question, a lot of our students, a huge number of them are very stressed out, and we asked for what were the reasons behind that. And the number one reason, 80%, were concerned for the health of their loved ones. So again, it's showing the compassion and the care that our students have and how they're looking out for one another. And then we asked them, what was the one thing that brought you comfort? And it was relationships, relationships, relationships. So kudos to family, because that came up as a number one reason why students felt that they could make it through, as their relationship with their family and their spouses. And another was their roommates. And so just to pay attention that that's something that is so important for us to remember about what is getting our students through this hard time. And they also mentioned that the most important social connections to them were the in-person conversations they were having and also video calls. So I know that that might be good news to parents and to guardians and to students, is that people are number two, is they really want to see people. And number one is we're trying to do as much in person as we possibly can, noting the social distancing, the masking, etc. And then another good news, 93% of our students said that they are abiding by the green and gold promise. And that's wonderful. It's great to have, again, their responsibility and their care for one another. One of the things that we did ask about were what resources that they were familiar with. And the highest ones were mental health services, and the second was academic support. And when we see some other lower numbers, like food insecurity was at 39%, rent insecurity was at 10%. So that means we have to continue to do a better job of doing outreach to them. There are lots of resources out there, and we're finding going door to door and leaving postcards at students' houses. They tend to pay attention to the snail mail and to the postcards on their mailboxes, and so we'll continue to do that a lot more. And because of this survey, we'll find out if there's pockets of the city that have similar needs, and that way we could really be strategic about our outreach. We also wanted to know if anyone was having conflicts with roommates about COVID-19 regulations, and there was 78% of the students weren't having any issues. For those that were, we offer tips in our office. They're on our website about how to have these difficult conversations. We also offer to do a video conference with the household, and students have really appreciated that support and that coaching. We also asked if anyone was having conflicts with guests about COVID regulations, and 86% said no. And again, we gave coaching to students for those that were having some difficulty with guests. So overall, it looks like roommates and guests are doing a very good job. For quarantining, Burlington has a supportive quarantine program. It's been amazing. I've talked to a number of students who have been participants in that program, and they actually provide quite a lot. They do a daily check-in call. They do a move-in care package, they do a gift card, they do a Fletcher library card, and that check-in has meant all the world to the students. And that's for 14 days. On the 7th day, you can get tested, and if you test negative, then you can go out of quarantine. And that's hundreds of people have gone through that supportive quarantine program. So kudos to the city of Burlington for their incredible work around COVID. I also want to say that I know that it's really going to be hard for students who don't go home for Thanksgiving or the holidays that they celebrate or the traditions that they're used to this time of year. And I absolutely get that, because I'm not traveling either, and I'm really missing my family and being with them. So a couple of thoughts that I had for the students out there: have a gratitude celebration with your roommates if you're all taking off together. It'd be a really nice way to sort of end the semester, to be really appreciative of all you've gone through together. And again, roommates came up really high on support systems for each other, and that might be something nice to do. I know a lot of families are doing Zoom gatherings. They're setting up different rooms if they're having extended family so that they can have smaller conversations, and they've been pretty excited about that. You can have family trivia night. You know, what was your first family car, and what was mom's favorite band? Something that, you know, just get your family a little bit closer, learn about a little bit more about one another, especially at a distance. And you can share pictures and videos. My niece just sent us tonight. She just decorated her whole house for Christmas, and she's sending the video of her little one putting lights up, and it's lovely to do all of those kinds of things. And I think what's so important is, where are we getting hope these days? So I know that I get a lot of hope from just hearing from students, working with students, seeing them wanting to be connected, wanting to have conversations, doing positive things in the neighborhood. We've done some self-distancing projects, planting flowers on streets and checking in with neighbors, and that has brought a significant amount of hope and joy to everyone. And then I just want to leave. I just saw this quote, and it just meant a lot to me. Was another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing, and it just made me feel like, oh my goodness, there is an end to this, and it's been a journey together that we will share, and that we will go on. And as part of going on is, I know we have critical needs, and this next slide just shows that we do have a Rally Cats cupboard, and it's open now, and it has incredible, it has a freezer and a refrigerator, and it's very well managed, and students can go there and get provisions for their households. You can always contact our office. We have a really good information sheet on our website for rent, utility, all the clothing, all the things that you might need. A lot of good information on that. Again, so many good local, state, and UVM resources. And the City of Burlington has a fantastic resource page. Again, has lots of information about what resources that you can go to. If you have questions about renting, you can always call our office, any landlord tenant questions, and you can also call Vermont Tenants, some remarkable resource for our students. So I hope we all find some hope as we move forward. And I really, again, have so appreciated the incredible collaboration between so many people to keep Vermont healthy, to keep our community healthy, and to keep UVM healthy. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Gail, for being such an amazing support to our off-campus students, but also just always helping us focus on hope and providing all these useful and amazing resources for a lot of our students who are living off campus, trying to make sense of what's available to them. I have the opportunity to spend some time with you to talk about the next couple of slides. Is really all about students who are currently living on campus and how they should be planning and preparing for what's next. Let's talk about something that applies to everyone who's living on campus. And there's two things. Let's talk a bit about move-out assistance, but also move-out dates. So just want to make sure that we are all clear that students are expected to move out no later than November 25th at 12 noon or no later than December 12th at 12 noon. We've had some calls and some questions regarding later flights, ability to stay a bit past that time. At this point, we have done a great job of really identifying what is the latest point which we can that we can have students move out to support them, support you and your needs, while also doing the critical turn down that we need to do of our spaces. So if you can imagine this, we have over 2 million square feet of inventory. We're the first of real estate. We're the first folks in, but also the first ones, the last ones out. We need to make sure that after every student who's not authorized to stay leaves, we check every single room, address any health and safety issues that may be in that space, make sure that every single storm window is shut, every door is locked, every window is locked. So it takes quite a bit of time. And a lot of that work is also supported by our resident advisors. So we have a short window of time to complete that work before they too begin to depart and begin to enjoy their time with their family. So unfortunately, November 25th at 12 noon is the latest folks can move out. Some students will have requested to stay throughout the end of the semester. Those students will have until 12 noon on December 12th. Okay, our local area partner hotels have some great opportunities and some great rates for anyone who's interested in staying or needing to stay to catch a later flight or to catch a flight on another day. Move-out assistance, I'm going to repeat and reiterate what Gary said so well. I won't try to reconstruct it. He was quite clear. Supporting your student in moving out, it is allowed under the circumstances he outlined. It's important for us to know that no guests are allowed in the residence halls, but no guests are allowed in any of the spaces within UVM at the moment. It's also important to really understand and highlight that although you may want to move in or provide support to your student to move out, really we're asking you to do a curbside pickup. That's going to be the best and safest process for all of us involved. So that's what we all need to know, anyone who's living on campus as they prepare to head home for the break. The next slide, we're going to talk a bit about that Plan A that Annie highlighted. It's really the folks who are currently on campus and are returning next semester, right? So if you're here currently and you're returning next semester, what do you need to know? Gary talked about this as well. We're asking folks to do a pre-departure test. It's going to be the way to make sure that we're not unintentionally affecting those who we love or spreading COVID unknowingly. We're going to ask folks to hold on to your room key. If you know you're returning for a FAC next semester or you plan on returning for a FAC next semester, please hold on to your key. We do not need to collect those, but it's important for folks to plan accordingly. You're going to be gone for a minimum of 58 days. And I say a minimum because we're not sure what can happen. Anything can happen, actually. We want you to plan accordingly and take all that you need with you. All important documentations, all important supplies, all important materials. We will unfortunately not be able to let anyone back into the building once they have exited and departed the residence halls. That's actually part of the governor's ordinance as well. Students are not going to be allowed back on campus or won't have access back to campus until the earliest January 19th for anyone who's quarantining. So again, plan accordingly, take all important information with you. We unfortunately will not be able to mail or ship any items. So we ask you to plan. If you have a vacancy in your room and you're returning next semester again, this is the folks we're talking about, you have two options. At the current moment, you can pull in a student who's on campus right now. So if you're here on campus and you have a vacancy, we're asking you to do a few things. Either prepare that other side of the room and make sure you are welcoming to a potentially new roommate, or pull in someone who you may know. That student is currently on campus. You can do that through November 18th by sending us an email to reslife@uvm.edu, and we can help execute that pull-in. Some folks have asked to pull in someone who is currently at home. So I'm here now, I have my own space, and there's a vacant space in my room. I want to pull in someone who is currently at home. We're going to allow you all to do that starting December 3rd. We're going to open up a form and send you an email message that invites you to begin to do so. So you have two options, or actually three. You can just get your space ready, get excited about a new roommate. You can pull someone in who's currently on campus, or as of December 3rd, you can pull in someone who is currently at home. All right. So we listed here a couple of FAQs that we have gotten a lot of questions about, and I will sort of give you some of the things to weigh and maybe just very directly share what my approach would be. So folks have been asking, do I take all my belongings or do I leave them in my room? Now at this point, we're talking strictly specifically to folks who are on campus and know they'll be returning. Annie says, be flexible. For me personally, my motto is I like to be prepared. So we've been here before. We know what can happen, and for some of you who are sophomores, know it can be a very difficult experience, a challenging experience to not have access to your belongings for days on end, for months on end, because the state potentially closes. Those are things for you to weigh in or to weigh out. Okay, if you know for a fact you're returning, I would say gather as much of your personal belongings that are important to you and bring them with you, and try to leave as little as you can behind. That is what RAF would personally do, but you have to weigh some of that out. And I know some folks are traveling, so there's a lot to consider. That would be my personal approach. It is the safest bet. Be sure that whatever you leave behind, you can be comfortable leaving behind for either 58 days or longer. That is the standard that I would use personally. It's better be prepared. But if you're not prepared, we're going to ask you to be flexible. Okay. The other one is, what if I decide to be a remote learner after I leave? I'm going to echo what Jay shared. If you are unclear and still want time to consider an at-home option, I would strongly encourage you to sign up and select the at-home option now, and to also prep your room as if you plan to be at home. Actually, you will. Right? If you select at home for next semester, you'll have to take all your belongings with you. That is a safer option because we can always work on the back end to bring you back onto campus and into housing. It'll be difficult for you to get an at-home exception after the fact. What you're weighing at this point, to be extremely direct and transparent, what you're weighing at this point is, do I need more time to make a better informed decision around how comfortable I feel returning versus I want to secure my housing, okay? Because if you decide at home now, you will be giving up your room assignment. Which one is most important for you to decide? We're all making very difficult decisions. Is it more important for me to know exactly which room I might come back into if I'm still thinking about it? Or is it more important for me to have more time and flexibility to make an informed decision? And everyone, I know what I would decide, but everyone's gonna have to make that decision on their own. Unfortunately, we can't have both. We can't both have the security of knowing we're gonna have an exact same room that we and also choose at home at the same time. So that's just my piece of advice and guidance. I hope that's clear. I'm sure I'll get a few questions about it, so I'll try to clarify if there's any confusion. Let's move on to the next slide. We're going to speak now to students who are on campus and we know they're not returning. Same deal. We ask folks to get tested, a pre-departure test, again, to keep your families and yourself safe. We also ask folks to follow the checkout instructions that will be placed on your door. Please read all those instructions. The only difference here is we're going to ask you to please turn in your key. We want to make sure we're not charging anyone for that. Non-return key charge is it's a nuisance charge that can be easily avoided. So please make sure you turn in your room key before you go. And again, remove all your belongings. Anything left behind, we will not be able to pack, ship, or store. Okay, so we will just take it for 30 days and then donate it. So it's important for you to know that if you have chosen not to return for next semester, you have filled out the at-home form, you need to remove everything from your room. We also ask to just be proactive and submit any fix-its for damage or issues that are happening in your room. Students know what that is. That is a service request for any maintenance that has to happen in the space. That is an easy, quick way to assure that the item gets addressed, but that you're also not billed for any damage because you've addressed it proactively. Okay. What if I decide to be an in-person learner after I leave campus? Space willing or space providing, we will easily work with you all to get you an assignment once you return. It will not be the same assignment you had originally. I can guarantee that. It will most likely, it will almost exclusively always be a different assignment. We are working quickly to get folks assigned as we have new students coming back onto campus. So unfortunately, you can decide, fortunately, you can decide to be an at-home learner. If you decide to come back, we'll do the best we can to get you into housing, again, not in the same room. And the last FAQ that we're getting is, if I made a decision to be at home after I left campus, can I get my belongings? Yes, we will work with you. And again, it's not, I don't think the decision is yours. I will quickly point out here is if you make a request and it is approved for you to be an at-home learner after the deadline, which from my understanding will be not very common, only under very certain strict circumstances, we will work with you to identify a date and time for you to come back to campus and gather your belongings. I just want to reiterate for this question. It is one we've been getting. I want to clarify. It's not necessarily your decision to be at home after the deadline. It is the ability for you to make that request. But again, that will not be granted, only be granted under very strict circumstances. Do I have any other slides? We are on a roll here. That's Annie.
I think this one is more about just on campus and staying after break and what all that entails. Again, is to continue to participate in 7-day testing. If you're staying over that break period, upholding the green and gold promise, we've talked about all this. Dining is going to be limited. But we will have a few dining halls open and available over the Thanksgiving break. And after December 12th, though, we're probably going to limit it to just one dining hall. Even if that, we'll work with the very few students who will probably be on campus at that point during the winter break and need emergency housing. And then residential life and administrative services will certainly scale to whatever is necessary in terms of how many students stay on campus over the Thanksgiving break, all the way to December, and again, during the winter break for emergency housing. And as Gary mentioned, I believe earlier, the Howe Library will be curbside pickup only over this time during the Thanksgiving break and between. And when I say that, I mean just not the break, but all the way till December 12th. And then administrative services, probably always good to just check websites on our web for UVM. Just to double check what hours, and most probably are doing in-person and virtual meetings with students. So there you go. There you have it in terms of what staying over break really kind of looks like. And I think that's probably back to Raph for key dates.
All right, thanks, Andy, for giving us a good understanding of what students can expect while they're on campus post the Thanksgiving break. Some key dates that I mentioned for you to keep in mind, specifically related to your plans for housing. November 18th is the deadline by which, if you're currently on campus and you want to pull in your room and want to pull in someone into a vacancy you have. Okay, so you have until November 18th to email us at reslife@uvm.edu to pull in a roommate who is currently on campus. On December 3rd through the 15th, we're going to talk to you, reach out to you to ask what your arrival quarantine plans are. We'll go through all the options you may have, and we're also going to ask students to select their move-in time frame. Okay. Also on December 3rd, if you are currently on campus and have a vacant space in your room and want to pull in someone who is currently at home, we'll open up that form for you as well. And as we've said a couple of times, January 7th is when you get your roommate assignments for anyone who is new to campus.
Great, thanks. Thanks again, Raf. So last section, you're probably all excited about that. And we only have 2 slides. We're just going to do these quick and talk about, okay, so what is like a sneak preview into spring, and what might January bring us? And I believe that goes to Gary first,
Yep.
and then me.
Okay, so I want to highlight a few things about returning in January. And you're going to hear us say this an awful lot, but any students coming to UVM in January must quarantine for 14 days or 7 days plus the negative test prior to arrival. As we did over the summer, we are going to be offering on-campus quarantine option for those people who have to travel a long distance and can't come directly from where they live to campus. So if you have to take a flight or you've got to spend a night halfway between, we'll be making that available. But if you're driving up in one day, you must plan to quarantine for 14 days at home or 7 days and then get a test. One of the things that we found very successful last summer in helping us manage any potential spread of COVID on campus was a pre-arrival test. As many of you recall, we sent you information over the summer about signing up for a test that we expected you to take before you came to campus and get those results. And when they were negative, you were allowed to come back. If they were positive, folks from our Center for Health and Wellbeing worked with you to develop a strategy so that you could complete your isolation at home and then come to campus. We'll be doing that again, and we'll be sending more information about that in December. You've heard this a couple times again, but something we hold very important to us is the green and gold promise, and we're going to ask you to recommit to that promise. You'll be provided a pre-arrival check-in list with information about apps you need to download. And just like the pickup at Thanksgiving, it's going to be just the reverse. Families that will be dropping students off must follow all the Vermont travel guidelines. You must travel to Vermont in a personal vehicle to and from Vermont. You're not allowed in any UVM facilities. You may help your student unload at curbside. You must wear a mask. You must stay 6 feet away from anybody you don't live with. And you may stay overnight at a lodging property in Vermont only if you quarantine at that property for the entire time you stay. Back to you, Annie.
Great, thanks so much, Gary. And I'm gonna bring it on home, as they say, with just wrapping up. And so if you've made your decision, or once you make a decision and you have decided to come join us in person on campus in January to get ready for the February start of classes, then these are some key dates you want to know. These are the January through 19th through 28th is what we call quarantine arrival. That will most likely be in a hotel nearby campus, and very similar to what we did back in August for a lot of our students was if you need to quarantine because you're traveling publicly, then you can come to campus and we'll get you set up and we'll help you get tested and quarantined during that time. But if you live close enough and you know you can quarantine at home and drive directly to campus, then you can do that as well. January 28th is going to be our move-in for our new to campus. So that even includes some of you who are at home right now, but want to be with us in person in the spring. We're going to have those folks move into campus on the 28th. And then that's as long as you're not quarantine with us prior to that. Get your day 0 test and then start with activities. In January we'll do, and even beyond that, we will do some orientation activities for that group of students, both virtual and a few in person. And then January 30th and 31 is when our returning students will come back and move in and do their day 0 test. So that whole entire time period is kind of when the transition will be for move-in. And then by January 31st, all of the students who are off campus, that's the deadline. That week prior to February 1st, first day of classes, is when they all need to take their day 0 test. So that's a good timeline to keep in mind if you know for sure right now, or if you ultimately make the decision to join us in person on campus in January. And then the last slide is just a little bit of a heads up. We can go to that one. That our next session that we'll probably check back in with you will be January 12th. And of course, in the meantime, here's the UVM URL that you should go to. We'll have all the information on this website for you. We'll continue to update it if we need to. It's just the best place for you to get all of your answers. And speaking of answers, you probably have some questions now that we will be happy to walk you through. And I'll do my best again as hostess with the mostest to try to read some of these and then kick them back to whichever presenter I know has the expertise to be able to help you out. So why don't we get started with all of that and move right ahead. So our first question, where do we get the meter request form? What on earth is a meter request form?
It's going to be a commuter request form. I'm going to.
Oh, it's a commuter request form. Yep. Thank you, Raph.
And are we able to put links in the chat? Can we put links in the?
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, we should put links in the chat. That'd be great if we could respond.
I'll put the link.
Okay. Thank you. That's like the first question. I didn't even know what to do with it. Okay. Keep going. Here we go. When, before Thanksgiving break, will freshmen in the dorms know whether or not they'll be able to remain in their current dorm room for next semester? They can know that now, Raph, right? If they're choosing to come back.
Yeah, yes. I typically know how to decode the questions. I'm struggling with this one. If you're here now and you return next semester, you are going to stay in your same room.
Yep. Okay. That's what I thought too. All right. Will the Howe and medical libraries be open again in the spring like they are now? More than likely, right, Gary?
Yes, that's correct. They will be open.
Yep. Great. All right. Hang on. I'm losing my place a little bit as the chat moves up. As a sophomore, I have a friend living in a double with an empty bed in honors college on campus. Okay, these individual questions always kind of kill me, but we'll hang in there with them. Empty bed in honors college on campus. Can she pull me into her room next semester? I'm in the Cultural Crossroads Learning Community. So it's a little bit about Raph going across learning communities and pulling in a roommate.
Yeah, it's a pull-in because there's an empty space. And here's my recommendation. Do not wait until next semester. Do that before you leave. Because if you wait until next semester, when it may be more convenient, we might assign that space to someone else during the break while you're gone. So if the space is there right now, there's a vacancy, do that pull-in right away. The sooner the better. You have until the 18th. So I would submit that email now. The resident of the room has to make the request. So you can't invite yourself into someone else's room. Not how it works. But the roommate resident can send us an email and say, I would like to request this lovely person as my roommate.
Great. All right. And I'm looking at the published questions and there's not too many more. Oh, here's one. Do at-home students get priority registration when selecting courses? Jay, how do you want to address that question?
No, that was certainly true for when we had everyone re-register in the summer. However, for the fall, that is not necessary. We anticipate that there will be plenty of spots in remote and online sections, as well as in those special sections that are exclusively for at-home students. So you should register at your regularly scheduled time. If you're entitled to priority registration on a particular day, then you would register at that time. Otherwise, register at the regular time.
Great. And Jay, I'm going to stay on an academic question. I'm going to move up one chat here. Sorry. The presentation stated that spring course sign up is on Monday. Is that for all students? My student was told freshman sign up is next Friday.
Yes, so I said it be, well, I may have misspoken. What I meant to say is that it begins on Monday, and that is primarily for graduate students on Monday, and then it moves through each of the classes. So if you have a first year student, they will be registering on Friday morning, most likely.
Okay, great, thank you. And Gary, this one's probably to you. Where does my student get a testing exemption form if leaving a few days early before Thanksgiving?
Sure. If you go to the Return to Campus website, that's off the main page, go there, and then you'll go to the COVID Information Service Center. And on the right-hand side, there's a thing for testing exemptions and concerns, and you can fill it out. And I'll put that in the chat as well, too, in the response to the question.
Great. Thank you, Gary. And then here's a question I think we've been trying to answer this evening. If things get worse, can you change to at-home learning? And I believe really the advice here from all of us is probably the best thing to do is to choose at-home learning. If you have any qualms whatsoever that things might get worse, that you're not sure, it's probably best to choose at-home learning. And then if you want to come back, it's always easier to kind of get you back on campus later, but it's harder to do it the other way around. Jay, am I right on that one?
Yeah, Annie, it's hard to emphasize that enough. If you're truly on the fence, definitely land on the side of choosing at home now, because we may not be able to offer you that option later on. So if you think you might need it, choose it now, and then you can request a reversal if you do change your mind, let's say in December or in early January.
Great. And you know what, I'm going to jump one question to the next one because it has to do the same thing. If our student picks at home, by when can they choose to convert to on campus?
So I think we had indicated it, that will be considered actually, I'm going to say on a case-by-case basis. It depends a little bit on the housing situation and so forth, but it would be in January. Raf, do you remember what the date was that, I'm not sure that we decided on an exact date. I think we decided it's case by case.
It is case by case. It's also going to be space dependent on campus. It's just so many variables. What I would recommend, so there isn't a hard fast date, what I would recommend is prior to quarantining. It'll be good for you to know what your quarantine plans are going to be. So I would say no later than how much time you need to get prepared to begin a quarantine, possibly on campus on January 19th. Are you flying? Might you need to buy a ticket? You may want to give yourself 6 to 7 days. So again, I would probably be thinking around the week of the 12th, 13th. That's how I would make a choice.
Great. You're all just so helpful. I love this. Okay. If picking up a student the Saturday before Thanksgiving, does a pre-checkout for COVID testing need to be filled out? No, I don't think there's any formal checkout process for COVID testing. You'll want to make sure you're checking out of your res hall room, especially all the things that Raf talked about in terms of moving out. But there is no formal checkout of testing. Gary, am I correct?
And I would just say, using that person's example, if they're traveling on that Saturday, get that extra test on Thursday so you'll get the results on Friday so that you know that it's okay for you to travel.
Great.
You do not need to sign up for that test other than to use the Co-Verified app to schedule it.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much, Gary. And I'm gonna then Raf, I see here is put the commuter form that folks can use. That's in the chat now. Another question is, as of now, will dining in the spring look the same as in the fall? Pretty much, yes. Dining in the spring will probably look very much the same. We'll have limited, spaces indoors in the dining hall. We will have tents, remember, that are heated that people can go to and dine, but a lot of it will also be grab and go. Moving on, if athletes need to arrive on campus early for preseason workouts, will they be able to stay in their current room on campus? We're actually, Carl, looking and working with athletic department, so I would go back and talk to your coach about what plans will be made. I know Raf is having conversations with the athletic department about how and when we can house athletes. So stay tuned and talk to your coach about that. If we're paying room and board for the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, can't a student just stay there, staying until December 12th and then leave on the 26th or 27th? So
I can answer that one.
Go ahead. Thanks, Raf.
In theory, yes. But remember, when you're signing up to stay, you're signing up for a number of things, including agreeing to test, which means you'll be in a testing rotation and cycling. It means abiding by, and if you say after that, it may be a cost, not through the end of the semester. But that means you now have to fill out another form that lets Gary know, or the COVID Information Center know, that you are now asking to be exempt from the testing requirement, so that you are not inadvertently put through the conduct process for missing a test. That's a lot of work to stay for an extra day or two. My recommendation, nice hotels around the area. That would just be easier.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks, Raph, for taking that. Do at-home students get priority oh, we did that one. We did that one. Where does my student get testing exemption form? We did that one. Why are these all, hang on. I'm like down below here. Okay, got that. Will students who were at home in the fall and took the 3-credit wellness environment course be guaranteed to be placed in the wellness dorms in the spring if they decide on campus?
Yeah, my language in the slides has been very intentional. We will prioritize, which means we'll do the best we can. I will not guarantee that at the moment. It's going to be space dependent.
Okay, yeah, I get it. It's going to be a lot of moving parts, perhaps not knowing quite yet who's going to decide to be here in the spring and who's not. So it's going to be quite a process. My daughter lives in Plattsburgh, New York. Will a commute option still be available for the spring? Can they commute from Plattsburgh, Raph? Is that too far?
That might be too far. Submit the form. We are really good at getting those forms processed quickly. There's some huge contract implications for those. And then my staff will get back to you, and we will need to sort of run it through our system and get the actual listed home address confirmed first, and then we can let you know whether or not they qualify.
Yeah. Gary, here's a good one about quarantining. Quarantine clarification, the student can drive in 1 day, so we'll quarantine at home. You know, they're not going to be leaving for 14 days, but their parents and siblings and everybody in the household will be coming and going. Does that still count as quarantine? So I think it's probably minimizing the interaction with all of that, the folks coming and going, right?
That's exactly, and I know Michelle's providing some more information on that. You're really going to need to minimize your interaction with those people because they could be bringing it into the house and defeating your purpose of the COVID, the quarantine.
Yeah, great.
Hey, Annie, can we go back to the question about commuting from Plattsburgh?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I'm going to flub that one up, and I feel like I need to pull Gary in. So I would recommend that that's more of a request an at-home. You're commuting from another state, so you shouldn't really be coming onto campus without quarantining every time you go back and forth. Isn't that right, Gary?
You can travel for school purposes across,
okay.
So that would be okay.
Okay, sounds good. Just want to make sure I'm not giving anyone misinformation.
Yep. Yeah, that's good catch, Ralph. Okay. When a student chooses the winter break emergency housing, it seems that the student will need to move to a single hall for that period. If so, do all their belongings need to be moved to the new room? Also, please confirm the price for that period is now $1,000 and not $535 as mentioned in October. Raph.
Yes, in October did we talk about $575? I believe for just housing. The cost is $1,000 now for combined housing and meals. Such a short time period, not knowing how things are going to get. We found it imperative to include or incorporate some kind of dining option for that to ensure that if things get worse, our students are secure and taken care of. So it is $1,000. We will ask students to bring not all their belongings, but as many things as they think they will need access to for that time period of about 58 days. So again, they will just be able to need to pack what they need. They won't have access back into their original room. That's the thing to keep in mind. It's just for everyone's safety. You won't be able to return back to your original room. So you have a time frame to move, pack carefully and thoughtfully, and $1,000, right? I think is that what we're confirming the cost? Yes, $1,000 for housing and meals.
Yep, it's both. Right. In October, we were only talking about housing, and then now we're talking about meals as well. Keep in mind, if we have really low numbers of students, we'll try to figure out what's best for dining for each student who may be staying with us during emergency housing. And remember, emergency housing really are students who truly have nowhere else to be that will be allowed to stay on campus. Next question, is the 48-hour before you leave for Thanksgiving COVID test mandatory? What happens if a student tests positive? Gary, you want to take that one?
Sure. No, it is not mandatory. It's just very strongly encouraged. We just want to make sure that you're traveling back to family and friends and that you're healthy and safe. If a student does test positive, the isolation space on campus will be available. You are allowed, if you're able to drive directly from campus without stopping to your home, even if you're positive, but you cannot stop along the way. If that does come up, folks from the Center for Health and Wellbeing will work through those options for you that are best for you.
Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going here. 2 questions. Is ski club active, and will students be allowed to hit the slopes on the weekend? Well, let's see. Ski club will be active, but remember, if a student is reliant on a bus or some other public transportation to get to the ski slopes, that's going to be fairly limited. There are limited numbers of people who can be in a vehicle altogether. And then I would strongly recommend that you follow all the different ski resort websites and find out what they are doing and their hours of operation in terms of what that will look like once January comes around. So I think every plan right now for the ski resorts is to be open, but I would watch those carefully if you have a favorite that you want to follow. Next question will be, if we are making a flight arrangements and want to do a day 7 with a COVID test, when is move-in? Well, if you are a returning student, then it's going to be on the 30th or 31st. If you've already done your...
if they're taking a flight, they have to quarantine once they arrive.
You're right.
You're right. Over to Gary, the quarantine master. Gary, is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say that's accurate because the person implies that they're taking a flight, which means they're coming in a congregate carrier, which means they need to plan to arrive here on January 19th to begin the quarantine.
That's right. Thank you. Sorry, I missed that whole day 7 thing. For students staying on campus over Thanksgiving, will dining halls offer a Thanksgiving meal? Yes, they will. They will have a Thanksgiving dinner that evening on that day of Thanksgiving. And with COVID increasing in the state and the county, if your student has to fly long distance, is it an option to leave earlier than the 24th? Will their teachers that have in-person class be okay with that? Jay, what do you think about faculty and students leaving earlier than the 24th?
I recommend that they contact if you have in-person classes or you're scheduled for an in-person day in a mixed class, that you contact the faculty member and find out what the attendance policy would be, and also how the materials might be available. Can you schedule an appointment to catch up? Will there be a recording? Because different faculty have different solutions to student absences.
Okay, thanks, Jay. We got a question here from Mary Beth about, looks like some parking. Okay, will you consider allowing freshmen to have cars on campus for the spring semester due to travel restrictions placed on family members coming from out of state? And another question is, work responsibilities can make the quarantine process difficult, but allowing freshmen to have vehicles can eliminate the need for travelers from out of state to enter Vermont. Gary, do you know if we have made any decisions about who's allowed to bring a car on campus and who's not?
I've not heard of anything, but we'll make a note to follow up on this.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you very much. Okay, another question coming in. Can student access their room to grab a bag bin before moving into quarantine room?
We haven't fully flushed out that check-in process into quarantine. I would think so. I think we want a process by which folks first move in and check into that residence hall so we know who's here before going over the quarantine. So that's highly likely.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I agree.
I would say probably work like we did in August, where people moved their belongings to their permanent location, and then we moved them to the quarantine location. The reason we can't do quarantine on location on campus in the spring is that the space is occupied with students, which is why we need to do it off campus.
I answered the question about a Thanksgiving meal on campus. Yes, there will be one. The next question is, how do you envision on-campus students socializing during the winter months when being outside is not an option? The strict no one in your room seems unrealistic. Well, you know what? Students are actually pretty good about socializing outdoors. The winter cold doesn't really do too badly for our students. They seem to be outdoors. We actually recommend that they get outside, play in the snow, go for hikes, go for long walks, ski, whatever, snowshoe, whatever is possible, but to be outside really is the best thing to do. And again, I want to mention the tents that we will have up. We'll have 2 tents up and they will be heated, and I think that's another really good option. And we might have to still be really strict with the guest policy. Just depends on how many cases that we'll have open or up ongoing. Next question. Our student was placed in quarantine, but we weren't notified. Why aren't parents being notified when their students are forced to quarantine? Well, the word forced is hard. I would hope that they would want to quarantine and keep themselves safe and everyone else safe. And Michelle, do you want to talk a little bit about why we don't notify parents? I'm pretty sure we do it because we believe that the students will also contact their parents if they need to. And we often try to keep students' privacy around these particular issues. But Michelle, I don't know if you want to weigh in any more than that.
Sure. No, you're absolutely right. We encourage students to contact their parents, but we won't and can't share that private protected health information with parents unless the student specifically gives us permission or asks us to do that.
Great. Thank you. Hey, this person knows this is a Gary question. Gary, UVM will ship vault tests again in January. You want to answer?
The answer is yes. We're not using the Vault company again. We're using a different company, but we will be shipping you the kits. You will not need to schedule a observed go-to meeting, I think is what we used. You will not need to do that. You can self-administer. It is the same type of test we're doing on with the swab. So that's why we decided to go with this company. Yeah, but we'll be shipping it to you, prepackaged mailing return envelope, way to log in and set up your account so that you can get the results as well.
Great. Mary Beth asks, is it possible to change the currently selected meal plan for the spring semester? Yes, it is. Please contact our meal plan office to do that. And are there winter classes available during the break? Jay, you want to talk about any winter term classes?
Yes, there will be winter session classes available. And there are no in-person winter session classes as there might usually be. So you're looking at online courses primarily.
Okay. This question is if they are in Vermont, I'm assuming the students. If a student is in Vermont, can they come home for Thanksgiving and then come back to campus for the last couple of weeks? We have loud siblings. Oh, I won't tell anybody. No, that's the exact scenario that we don't want to have happen, right, Gary? We don't want anybody going home for Thanksgiving and then coming back to Vermont. Matter of fact, that's not going to be allowed. That's exactly why we want you to choose now. If you're going to go home for Thanksgiving, you're going to stay home right up to those last 2 weeks, 1 week of class and 1 week of finals. So please don't do the back and forth. That's exactly what travel issues we're having. That may cause increasing of cases. Gary, did I say anything wrong there? Am I all right?
Good. You're good.
Okay. What was the final website on the second to last slide? Justin, you want to put it back on the second to last slide for us so folks can take a picture of that? And Joshua, I know, also posted it in the chat. What is the deadline for students to change their minds if they choose to do remote by the deadline tomorrow, 11/13? Remember, we're stressing folks, choose at home. If you cannot choose by tomorrow, then choose at home, and then let's talk case by case about bringing you back in the spring if you want to do that. What percentage of UVM population that has contracted COVID have required hospitalization? Gary, I don't think we've had.
I think 0. Michelle, I don't think anybody's been hospitalized.
No, no one's been hospitalized.
Thank you both for that. Gonna start to wrap up on questions here, folks. Does Vermont rule for no more than 10 people inside change how in-person classes are being offered the remainder of the semester?
So that issue came up, and we spoke with the Commissioner of Health, And he felt that higher ed was doing such a great job with managing the COVID on their campuses that those restrictions, which were advisory to the state, he felt comfortable with us continuing to have in-person classes and offering events the way our guidelines are set up.
Great, thanks, Gary. And here's one about quarantining and travel. Picking up my son from New York, does it matter if I have the 3-day test or the rapid test after quarantining for 7 days? Michelle, do you have a sense of which would be better?
Well, Vermont still requires 7 days before you get tested. In New York, they are allowing just a 3-day period. And the 3-day test is probably a PCR test, but the rapid test is likely an antigen test. So you need a PCR test after your period of quarantine. And for Vermont, that period is 7 days.
Okay, so it sounds like a 7-day PCR. So got that right? PCR test, great. All right, if student lives in New Hampshire, can they quarantine at home for 7 days and bring the negative test on move-in day? Gary?
Yes, they can. I would just make sure it's 7 days. It's 7 days, get a test, get results. So you need to plan if it's a 2-day waiting time or a 3-day waiting time, that you do the quarantine for 7 days, get the test, then get the results.
Okay. All right, the next question Raf answered about pulling in someone who's not in your learning community, so folks can see that answer. Are local Vermont students who are living on campus allowed to travel home with the latest Vermont COVID restrictions? Yes, right, Gary? They can travel home within the state of Vermont, absolutely.
There's no in-state travel restrictions right now.
Right, and it's still good to go get that test before they leave and know that they're negative before they go home to see family. I paused my enrollment this semester and am planning to live on campus for spring. Then next fall will live off campus. I will have only lived on campus for 3 out of the 4 semesters. Will I be penalized? There's no penalty if you chose at home. I'm not sure what the pause in your enrollment was. You may want to call the registrar's office about that. Or residential life to determine your personal situation with what the pause was. If it was simply at home, choosing at home, you don't get penalized for the semesters that you were at home. If I quarantine for 14 days before coming to get her on November 24th, can I walk around outside on campus? Gary?
Outside, not inside buildings.
Okay, great. Outside, go outside, wear your mask, be safe, and stay away from folks. What is the suggested approach in determining how to choose courses if one is still on the fence regarding stay at home versus coming to campus? Jay, do you have a thought about how to determine the best courses if you're still on the fence? Probably ones that are going to be all remote, I would imagine, and then it's the simplest way to do that.
Yes, and I do want to emphasize there was another question about registration. So unlike in the summer, there's no period where registration is really shut down. Yes, your first opportunity to register is next week, but you can also go in and change your schedule around. And then you also have that drop add period opportunity during the first week of classes in the spring. So you have time to actually change your schedule if you do change your mind. If you want to not have to change your schedule, I would aim to have a fully remote and online schedule. And that way, you know that regardless of whether you're on campus or you choose the at-home option, you will be able to attend all of your classes remotely.
Great, thank you. I already answered the question about, well, we did, Raf did, about grabbing something for your room. Yes, before you move into quarantine. Bus system right now, Gary, the bus system probably is not necessarily going to be running on campus during the day, but it runs at night, I know.
Yes.
Okay. And will current at-home honors students returning to campus for the spring be given priority for honors housing? Raf, what do you think about that? Honors housing priority?
No, it's just like any other housing option at the moment. They're still part of the Honors College. It's going to be based on space availability. Okay.
It is all space availability. All right. And I'm going to do 2 more questions, folks, and then we're going to wrap it up for this evening. And here they are. If my roommate and I were planning on rooming together this semester, fall 2020, yet we both ended up staying remote, at home, how can we request to be roomed together for the spring semester? Is there any way to accommodate that, Raf, to pull in each other?
No, I think it's what I said earlier. There is no roommate preferencing process. We won't have the capacity to do that. Most of our rooms are either half occupied or fully occupied, and we don't feel comfortable moving folks around to try to make roommate matches. So unfortunately, we can't make that happen. But we ask folks to be on the lookout for your housing assignment. If we were going to prioritize putting you in the same learning community. Once you get to campus, you can do a trading spaces to move together.
Okay, thanks so much, Raf. And then, you know what, this person's thinking way ahead, Raf. I don't know if we have this date in our heads quite yet. Can you give us a firm date and time for spring semester end move out? So at the very end of next spring, when they should move out, the time is key for those of us booking round trip flights.
Oh, I get it. I do get it. we typically have years that the dates solidified in September for the rest of the year. So believe me, I get how difficult this is. And I also know that we're trying to work out day by day. So that question gives me a little bit of a heart palpitation. We don't have that now, but I think we quickly need to figure that out.
Yeah.
So if you can just stay tuned. I hear you. We'll try to get you a date as soon as we can.
Yeah, and we can put it up on the website once we confirm it. It's typically right after finals.
Yeah,
so
we haven't determined what the process for move out is though, in terms of because of volume. So
yeah,
we should know more soon.
Okay, great. All right, two more, I promise, and then we're gonna wrap up. Okay. Is there a deadline for taking next semester completely off, Jay?
Yeah, the deadline for and what you're looking for is a leave of absence form, and the deadline for that would be January 31st, which is the day before classes begin in the spring. So that is a weekend. If you need to file it, then look for the form and email your student services professionals as well in your dean's office, and they will make sure that it's backdated and accepted. So again, that deadline is January 31st, but of course, if you know you want to be doing that, I recommend that you do it as soon as possible.
Great, okay. There was a question that Gary answered about where will quarantining be happening in January? And then Jay, do you want to speak a little bit about the rationale about why we're recommending so much for students to choose at home now versus if they're on the fence, versus choosing in person and then trying to get that back out again?
Yeah, the rationale for that is we, in order to manage our processes to make sure that everyone has a housing assignment who needs one, to make sure that students receive accurate bills and that their student financial aid package is appropriately calculated, we need to have a firm date by which we can no longer really consider the at-home option for students. Of course, we can always consider exceptions, but they are on a case-by-case basis. And really, after a certain point, it becomes extremely difficult to get a student completely set up the way that we would like to. And so if you sincerely are on the fence, it's much easier to reverse an at-home decision and decide to return to campus than it is to go in the opposite direction. And that's why we're recommending that you, if you're truly on the fence, that you just declare at home, and then if you decide that you would like to come, that you request a reversal. And again, we would recommend that you request a reversal by, the first week or so of January. If you ask to come back on January 29th, it's going to be very difficult for us to arrange housing and so forth. So that does give you some extra time to think about it, but you don't have endless amount of time to think about it. We can't really accommodate requests to return to campus on the day before classes begin.
Okay, great. Wow, I think that's a great place to wrap up. Terrific response, and I hope we have been as thorough as you need us to be to, try to respond to many questions. And I want to encourage you to go back, listen to the session. Again, we will post this and have it available at this website. that's showing on the screen. I want to thank all of our presenters this evening. They work morning, noon, and night to try to put this content together for you and get the best possible answers to all of your questions. I know these scenarios are not easy. We wholeheartedly appreciate everything that you're doing to make all of these arrangements and plans and to work in partnership with us. So students out there, hang in there. You're doing a great job, and families out there, thanks so much for your partnership. We really appreciate all the support that you've been giving us, and really hope that this is helpful. And always, it's probably best to email us. That way we can often CC our colleagues if you still have questions. Phone calls are okay, but they can get backlogged a little bit quicker than emails can. And uvmstrong@uvm.edu is a great email listserv to be able to contact during this time. So hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining us. And everybody take care, stay healthy, and stay safe. Best to you all.